Welcome to Boomstick Gaming, this is Alex, and I'm going to be giving my undiluted impressions and critical evaluation of the free-to-play action RPG, Genshin Impact. I'm a very strict but fair critic when it comes to free games, because 9 times out of 10, I would usually just prefer taking the flat-out full purchase risk to have the entire game at my disposal all at once, instead of being passively trained the entire time to feel like I need to regularly open my wallet to continue enjoying the game. Well, I'm going to be showing off and explaining exactly what you should expect from most everything in Genshin Impact, from combat and co-op, to progression and that oh so tricky to do right monetization. So, let's get started. In Genshin Impact, the combat system revolves around an elemental synergy mechanic, along with utilizing multiple playable characters you can switch out to mid-battle. Although on paper and initially, the elemental combination system makes it seem like there's layers and layers of depth to the combat, but in practice, since all of the elements do extra combo statuses no matter how you combine them, this ultimately turns into something you'll just be happening to be doing rather than something that really requires you to flex your tactical battle bone. Don't ask where that is. The combat flow is primarily dishing out your one string of attacks or your charged attack with your character's one given weapon type they're allowed to equip, while firing off their assigned special ability once it's recharged. Since you will likely be constantly jumping around through your entire team to flail away with them and activate their abilities when they're ready, this will kinda just make those fancy elemental synergies just kinda happen anyways, kind of like making you feel like you're doing cooler things with your buttons than what you actually are. Although somewhat simplistic and straightforward, that doesn't mean no fun, because raw depth isn't always everything with a combat system, and sometimes just the visual flair of all these elemental effects melting your screen makes smacking on things with an oversized weapon as HP bars diminish still fun enough to pursue. Some of the enemy types you'll be coming across require certain elemental types to take them down or destroy their shields, and this constant shifting out to different party members' elements element is more of a requirement than simply just a recommendation. However, there is a co-op component in Genshin Impact, and depending on the party size, can allow you to focus just one or two of your characters as active online players bring in their own to fill out your team, or you to theirs. Although initially I thought Genshin Impact was going to be a little more co-op focused than it really is, still, once you progress far enough in the story quests and get your account to adventure level 16, you'll then be able to join in with other players to do some, but not all of the things present in the game. Don't recommend a day one play session with a friend who quickly goes and downloads it to play with you, because Adventure Rank 16 will likely take a solid 5 to 10 hours to get to, depending on how you play, which does somewhat deter that concept of a one-to-one co-op playthrough. It is nice, however, when you're in a group, be it cross-platform matchmaking or with a direct friend, that you can much more easily pull off those synergizing elemental combo effects together that you will all be constantly triggering, mostly completely on accident still, but hey, they do make you all feel cool. To boil down the overall progression, aka the point of the game in Genshin Impact, it's like a giant theme park of showering you in rewards of experience, materials, foods, little crystal thingies, and other seemingly completely random items to advance your entire team. This overload of stuff seems quite daunting at the start as to what it is exactly you're collecting, but when you figure it all out, it's actually very simple, because it's all just fuel to continually power up the stats of your characters, weapons, and their artifacts. For example, the book-like items you'll be finding are simply used to directly increase the level of your characters, at least until they hit certain level milestones where it requires more specific collectibles, but characters will also be earning passive XP just from playing normally as well. Say you come across a much higher level mini-boss out in the world, well, jump in the menu, eat some of those books, don't ask too many questions, and bam, you are now a much more even matchup. Some might like this type of RPG leveling, some may not. Then after that, you'll also find some weapons along your journey, where 1% of them you'll actually equip and care about, the rest will then be consumed to further boost the stats of that one main weapon. Then lastly, you'll be finding artifacts, which are gear items you can equip on your character, somewhat like armor or ring slots, and you will continually power these up by feeding them your lower trash tier loot as well. These artifacts might take the appearance of simple bracelets, feathers, hourglasses, goblets, vials, and other oddly random things, but in the end, they are all just 2D images representing extra stats you'll socket onto your characters and never actually see. The sooner you realize that, the sooner you'll understand what much of the loot system really is. So combining all of that, whenever you open a random chest out in the open world, take down a difficult boss, or solve some kind of fairly basic puzzle, you will always be rewarded with A. different tiers of experience books which are used to level up your characters, B. different tiered weapons, C. different tiered artifacts, or D. a little in-game or digital store currencies. Giant paintbrush those rewards all over the map, and boom, there you go, that is how the entirety of the open world functions for the most part. This means you will not be finding any unorthodox or unpredictable role-playing style items as rewards. They will all funnel into these very carefully curated categories that are passively dictating the pace in which you gain power. This is not all bad though. For example, instead of gaining access to the world's largest candy store filled with the most rare sweets from your wildest imagination, what the heck could you find next? You are instead given a near-endless trail of Skittles and Starbursts over and over, which hey, those are delicious, I can just zone out and eat a whole pack no problem. And to me, that is how the progression felt in Genshin Impact, a carefree RPG treadmill of fairly enjoyable combat set around a visually interesting world to explore. Although this is also available on PS4, iOS, and Android right now, I'm playing it on PC, and I must say the performance of this game is near wizardry levels, which I was definitely not expecting. The frame rate is limited to 60, but still, even at full 4K, 1.5 render resolution slapped onto that, and maxed out settings, I honestly had to try for a decent amount of time to get the frame rate to buckle 1 or 2 frames below 60 with my RTX 2070 setup. Although pop-in is pretty noticeable at times, other than that, the look and performance of the game is freakishly near flawless, and the dev team's performance optimization hacks really need to be shared with the rest of the gaming industry that spent the last decade trying to barely harness 30 FPS. I really don't quite understand how it looks and runs as good as it does. Some playable characters will be unlocked through normal story progression, but some will require you to take your chances with the wish system. Somewhat odd word choice when money is involved. This allows you to spend currency you'll gain from playing or real-life monies on the chance to unlock a new character. If you don't get lucky, and you won't for the most part, you'll more than likely instead be amassing more average to decent artifacts and weapons instead. You can dig into each of the categories and see the actual statistical chances of everything you can earn before you start plunking down any money. This is somewhat of an annoyance in Genshin Impact, but to be fair, you don't really absolutely need most of the unlockable characters, and as long as you have at least one of every elemental type, you'll probably be just fine using them the majority of the time. You can have 4 of these characters active in your party at a time, and you will be coming across elemental specific puzzles and blockades out in your travels, but since you can just pause and switch out your team out in the field, it somewhat trivializes the entire concept of needing the right element at the right time. So if you don't absolutely need these different characters the game is tempting you with, why would you need or want them at all? Well, some might use certain weapon types you might actually prefer, and they also have their own unique special attacks and abilities. Other than this playable character gacha system, there are a few other things you can buy in the digital store, but nothing that absolutely crushes your dreams of enjoying the game entirely for free, if that's your goal when going into this. If you do happen to get super hardcore into Genshin Impact and are really enjoying it, those bucks can be tossed to the devs for the chance to unlock some new characters by using the wish system. I'm personally quite against the word chance when it comes to my money spending, especially in fantasy chance, but of course that's all up to you. So to start wrapping this all up, is Genshin Impact actually a fun open world action RPG that just so happens to be free, or is it just a big carefully conceived carnival of money spending opportunities? Well, honestly, at this point, it seems pretty fair for free to play, and I'm enjoying what I'm playing. It's not quite blowing my mind with the moment-to-moment gameplay, but it is a fun sit-back-and-relax style grindathon. Now, if you've already gotten your hands on Genshin Impact, let me know your thoughts on it from what you've played, or if you're going to go give it a try now, come back to this a little later and let me know your thoughts as well. There are not too many console and mainline PC titles with this gacha style monetization, so I'm pretty curious to see how this is received. That's all I had for you today, and as always, this has been Alex from Boomstick Gaming. I'll be seeing you next time.